he's doing intro first.
You're good.
Okay. All right, welcome to the today's workshop to review and discuss a preliminary engineering report for the Emerald Road extension from Southeast 92nd Loop to Emerald Road, roadway connecting project. Today's Tuesday, December 3rd, 2019. It's 2 p.m. We're at the Commission Auditorium. If you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Chairman Bryant, Vice Chairman Gold, Commissioner Moore.
Here.
Commissioner Zalek.
Here.
Commissioner Stone.
Here.
All right, first up will be Tracy Straub, County Engineer.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Monier Angel. So what we have today is a preliminary engineering report in a draft format. We're actually not even giving you the report yet. We're giving you the draft information of our Emerald Road extension, which is going to take it from existing Emerald Road in Silver Spring Shores out to the 92nd Loop. Our consultant is Davis Dinkins with Davis Dinkins Engineering, PA, and he has some sub-consultants with him today. I'm going to turn it over to Davis and let him walk us through how we do a preliminary engineering report.
All right, Mr. Dinkins.
Good afternoon. Excuse me, I like everyone else, I'm a little congested, so pardon me. My name is Davis Dinkins. Do you need my address? 2201 Southeast 30th Avenue, Suite 302. Is that okay?
You'll pass that up.
I have some water. Excuse me. So, Commissioners, thank you for your time today. This is for the first board workshop, the board workshop of the Emerald Road preliminary engineering report. Today is not, is that better? Today, there's no board action being requested. We're just here to kind of deliver to you where we are in the process, our findings so far, tell you where we have to go from here, hear any input or feedback you have, and answer any questions you might have. So I understand you have a busy day too, and you're probably behind schedule, so I'm going to move at a respectful pace, hopefully leaving time for question and answers before your next meeting. But if there's anything you'd like me to pause on, please let me know. So, how do we get, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Okay, great. So, after the planning of a roadway is done and it's identified as a segment or an improvement's needed, it's identified as a needed improvement for whatever reason. It could be a capacity project, could be a congestion relief process, could be a new development, a new major development coming in our population growth, and it's on the books. A preliminary engineering report is prepared, and that preliminary engineering report basically includes all of the studies and environmental and engineering work that's needed to help determine the optimal alignment, basically where we're going to build it and how we're going to build it, which would be, what's the section going to look like, how wide's the road going to be, what are the intersection configurations proposed to be, are signalization warranted, where's drainage going to happen, that sort of thing. So after the preliminary engineering report is done, it'll come back to the board, obviously, for more discussion, and then ultimately it'll come back to the board for consideration and approval. And then after that, you would move into the design phase of the improvement project, subsequent right-of-way acquisition if needed, and then construction, and moving on into maintenance. And that's kind of what this slide illustrates. So it's the beginning parts of the life cycle of a roadway project. So the preliminary engineering report includes things such as public involvement. So a lot of what we do in this process is we're going to facilitate meetings with stakeholders, significant stakeholders, and also jurisdictional agencies and the public. To date on this report, we've had considerable meetings with the City of Ocala, Marion County Office of County Engineer, Marion County Utilities, Duke Energy, and there's going to be more opportunity for a lot of public involvement and comment in the upcoming weeks when we have a public meeting that I'll talk about more about later. It's a very important part of this process. Excuse me. Also included is the engineering component. So by engineering component, I mean we're going to perform the necessary studies, traffic studies, the utility studies, the the needs of the project as pond siting analysis to handle the drainage needs. And we're going to perform these on a large scale, not detailed design, but a large scale format to determine what right-of-way impacts are going to happen, what right-of-way is needed, that sort of thing. Another part of the preliminary engineering report is, or I'm going to call it the PER from now on for short, is the environmental studies. So we're going to look at the potential effects that an alignment's going to have on the threatened endangered species impacts, gopher tortoises, that sort of thing, what mitigation is going to be required or could be required for that, as well as other natural or cultural or historical resources as well. So all of those things are identified so that we can recognize if we're going to have an impact or try to help choose alignment that has minimal impact. So where is Emerald Road Extension? This is a project location map. This is not one of the alignments we'll talk about later, but Emerald Road Extension, as Tracy mentioned, I'm going to use this. There we go. Can you see this? Mm-hmm. This is the existing intersection of Mary Camp Road and Emerald Road. And Emerald Road now comes down here and loops this way, and this is Emerald Shores Elementary. There is a big Duke Energy transmission line that runs right through here. And these are both the counties and the city's effluent disposal areas. And this is the Southeast 92nd Loop, the new Bellevue bypass. So, and I'll go over that stuff again in a little bit, but you can see that there's a lot of stakeholders that are included. That's why we've been coordinating for so long to try to build some consensus on some of the issues we're going to have to deal with. So, the need for this project. The need for the Emerald Road Extension was documented by being included in the 2040 Long-Range Transportation Plan that was already approved. This project's also already programmed for funding into the Transportation Improvement Plan for the upcoming years. And it's intended to relieve increased traffic congestion from the build-out of the shores of both residential and commercial development. And it'll provide a more direct route from the shores area to South Marion County, to the villages, to I-75, relieving congestion on Baseline and or 58th Avenue and Mary Camp. So the projected volumes at opening are north of 6,000 vehicles a day, and at the design year 2040, they're north of 7,000 vehicles a day. Excuse me, go back. When I gave you the projected volumes, let me put that into perspective. 475A, just north of 484, has roughly the similar volumes. Another segment that you might know would be Lakeware Avenue, south of 31st Street in the city. That has roughly the same volumes. So that's the capacity of the project that we're looking to move. So for this segment, we're looking at 120 foot of right-of-way width, and that's consistent with the Marion County Land Development Code for a rural collector roadway. And what I mean is we have an open section, and these are swales on either side that'll help convey stormwater. It'll have two 12-foot travel lanes, some paved shoulders, bike lanes, some stabilized shoulders, and sidewalks either side. Additionally, this right-of-way width is also capable of accommodating a multimodal path should one be warranted or desired to put in here, and you can see it could be on either side. It's shown on that side for convenience. So how do we decide how to get from point A to point B? That's the big question. That's the part of this report. So we know that this, again, for orientation, this is the signalized intersection at Mary Camp and Emerald Road. Down here is the 110th Street at 92nd Loop. That's also signalized. If you've been on the loop, you know there's an overpass right here that has for cattle to go back and forth between the city spray fields. And there's also a really large Duke transmission line that runs through here, not a distribution, but the high-level transmission lines that you see on the towers. So that carries with it a pretty significant set of encroachment guidelines as well. So what we've done and what this illustrates is all the different number of alignments that we have considered or combination thereof so far in this process to kind of arrive where we are. And a lot of these are based on engineering constraints as well as stakeholder input from the utility departments that are going to be impacted by the installation of the right-of-way. So a couple of them were fairly quickly eliminated for a variety of reasons. I'll just go through them real quick. This yellow dashed alignment, We recognized early on that this intersection is going to be signalized, and because of the spacing with the existing signalized intersections, that's just not going to work to protect the throughput on your road. So that one was then eliminated for that reason. In initial stakeholder meetings with Marion County, this green alignment was eliminated because it put some constraints on their planned and programmed wastewater treatment plant expansion. It confined them into an area that they couldn't work with. That, coupled with how it crossed this Duke power line, which is, again, carries with it a significant encroachment guideline set, had to eliminate that alignment. So we were left with a number of ways to get from point A to point B. One of these, you ask, why don't we have anything in here? Well, we had no connection point in this location because that's where the overpass is, and we have sight distance issues. We have to make sure that people coming either way over that overpass can see this intersection appropriately. So through a series of, as another note, so to get the magnitude of these impacts, because it shows it well here, this dark line is the divider between the county's effluent disposal facilities and the city's. Back when the loop was put through, this small portion here was expanded city effluent disposal spray field to mitigate for the impact they felt here with the loss of that, or the division of that spray field. So after the various eliminations, after a lot of engineering work and coordination meetings, we eliminated most of the alignments down to the final three. And again, you see a red, a green, and a blue alignment. The red alignment, it's only shown from the railroad to 92nd. The project extends all the way to Mary Camp, but since that's an existing corridor we're working with, the improvements would be the same regardless of alignment. So this illustrates the red alignment, which is a more direct route. This green alignment was an alignment that was based on stakeholder input to try to preserve as much contiguous land in the county's utility field without dividing it more than necessary. And the blue as well, it further divided the city, but it had the least impact on the disposal field, but there's some other impacts we'll talk about. So where did we go from there? What we did after that is we started a detailed analysis of the impacts that each one of these alignments are going to have on both of the utilities. We wanted to look at what the current impacts were, as well as what their loss for future disposal was. And what I mean by that is the county does not use all of its land for land application right now, but it does have expansion plans on the books. So we need to make sure that any of the loss that was mitigated for left enough room for the county's expansion plans as well. On the city side of things, we needed to try to come up with some plans to see if we were able to mitigate for the loss of their spray fields with existing lands available, or if additional lands are going to be needed. So what we did here is we started, for example, if we impacted a fixed spray head, we replaced it somewhere else. And this exercise was also done with these pivots. As a pivot was bisected, the balance of it was moved into fixed spray heads because it was a more efficient use of space. Initially, we had this area down here planned for mitigation, but again, in coordination with the city of Ocala, they preferred it up here for to preserve some more of their existing cattle operations. So we did this for each one of the alignments, and we established a cost. We have a consultant helped us establish a cost of what these potential impacts would be by looking at some historical figures, and then that was able to help us rank them on what was going to be the most expensive, least expensive option to get across these spray fields. In this blue alignment, what's important to note is that you'll see the alignment turn south almost immediately after it comes onto county property. There's an aerosol drift buffer in that area that is not currently used for disposal. And so the thought was, well, maybe we can use that buffer. But ultimately, the loss of land, the cost, the environmental impacts that would have happened in that buffer, and the cost to reestablish an appropriate buffer between the road and the neighboring residential units was far exceeded the other two alignments. So ultimately, and we did this for green as well, so you can see we've done it for all three. Ultimately, the results of that analysis, the blue was the most expensive, and therefore it was disregarded from further analysis. Once we narrowed our potential alignments down to 2, we started commissioning our environmental work. We did some threatened endangered species work to see if either one of the alignments had more or less impact than the others. Again, they looked for other natural resources, historical and cultural resources, to see if we were potentially impacting any of those as well. The results of both those were relatively the same, similar, I should say, with the exception that what was uncovered during our pond siding work initially was that the green was going to require an additional DRA over the red, so that, again, that'd be an additional impact in land area. So as an outcome as an aside, and an outcome to many of our stakeholder meetings, the need for the installation of an underpass arose. That was not originally programmed into this project, and neither one of these, it hasn't been finally designed. What you see here is you see a concrete pedestrian underpass, you see a steel plate structure. Envision something similar to the paved trail going underneath 475 by the horse park, something of that size. It's going to handle the cattle operations on day-to-day, to get both the city and the county's longstanding leases to facilitate getting their cattle back and forth, to feed their cattle, and also operational concerns that were felt by both the city and the county to facilitate their maintenance of this and operation of the spray field. Not all these spray fields are 100% automated, so they're still on both sides of the road. So any large equipment, when they hay the fields or when they have to do large work, that's going to be an at-grade crossing. This crossing's more for a John Deere Gator size or golf cart size piece of equipment to transport materials and possibly horse feed, that kind of thing. Cal.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Sorry. Do you have to elevate the road in order to do that? Because that's pretty flat there, right?
That's a great question. Yes, sir. Where we're looking at it, it's generally in this area. And what you would probably see, and we have to get
Hold
the
on
final
a second.
design.
Our people need to go back to the map.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
Sorry. Where we were looking at initially placing it is somewhere in this general vicinity, and the reason is twofold. For exactly the reason you pointed out, Commissioner, that it's not in the lowest area, so it allows us to probably elevate the road some and excavate some as well, so that we're not elevating as high as you would see maybe on an interstate overpass. There will be some elevation. The second reason would be so that both operations can share the singular overpass and not have to build two. Because the city grazes their land on both sides, and the county has a separate grazing operation on theirs.
And what exactly has to go? What exactly has to go underneath? That can't go above at an at-grade crossing.
Cows.
Cows.
Yeah, I think that there were some operational concerns voiced, but I think more than the operational concerns of the gator traveling across the road to carry the people, which is something to think about since they will be doing that on a more regular basis than equipment. The cows, they don't follow traffic laws. So, they need to be able to freely go from one side to the other, depending on the time of day or where the food is.
And how much does the crossing cost?
We haven't gotten to that point.
Well, it's got to be a typical range.
Yes, I would say the numbers we've been told are 6, 7-ish, $750,000.
We did one, Commissioner, on 92nd Loop.
Yeah.
Same, it would be
Same type
same
of thing,
way.
right? About $750,000.
So, obviously, when we get into the final design, we'll look at options to see what would be most cost-effective for the county and still provide the service life that it needs to provide, for sure.
Does the fill dirt for a project like that? Will there be enough DRA excavation and or material on site to pretty much cover that, or?
The good news is that the preliminary soil borings we've received, so fairly favorable soil conditions as you would expect out there. So the idea would be to try to provide as balanced of a site as as balanced of a project as we could. I can't say at this point whether we're going to need to import or export. We're not there, but the ideal would be obviously we balance it as well as we can.
Because there are spray fields there, do you actually need the same DRA function? Or, the absorption should be pretty darn good right there anyway, right? They are spray fields.
Right. Excuse me, that's another good point. And the preliminary soil borings have reflected just that.
Okay.
That some of the rates we're dealing with are well as well as we would expect, and so therefore the DRAs should be appropriately sized considering those.
So will most of that water be withheld within the right-of-way?
No, sir, they're still,
Ditch.
the right-of-way won't contain it all. There'll be some treatment that'll happen in the swales, but ultimately it'll be conveyed to a DRA location in the various watersheds. As part of the PER, we have a pond siting report, which goes into further calculations on that. I do have a slide later in the slideshow that can show you kind of generally how many and where those DRAs are located.
So on a project like this, just out of curiosity, can the DRA be made shallow or uniquely done in order to still continue to be a spray field and a DRA?
I would say the depth of them really at this point is going to be constrained by the soil characteristics of the soil profiles, because we
Yeah.
don't want to buy more land than we need. To
I was just
double
curious.
use
I mean,
them, no, sir, I don't think that's possible, because you're going to permit these, and you're going to be the maintenance responsibility of these. It's not going to be the same maintenance responsibility of your ongoing permit. Plus, you can't combine water and wastewater. Excuse me, can't combine spray field disposal and stormwater disposal. Per permit? Per permit.
Really, that just seems like government bureaucracy.
Well,
They're both wastewater. They're both being absorbed by the same exact material on the ground.
but they're not both the same quality of wastewater.
Well,
So from a permitting standpoint, what you're asking is actually, it's not unrealistic.
so is the
but-
stormwater off the road worse?
But no, wait, it could be. This is treated wastewater at this point.
Right.
However, you are mixing up two different environmental type items, and the permitting component with that would be really challenging. I'm not telling you that it couldn't be done, and I would encourage it if it was like your utility putting in a road through their own site or something, that you could have those conversations. But I don't know that you want to mix these two entities up from that standpoint, because your stormwater system then becomes responsible for if there's ever any issue that shows up at your wastewater plume. Your stormwater system becomes tied into that same responsibility. Same thing, if for some reason we had something happen with the stormwater system, that something got in that stormwater system and it was being picked up by the wastewater monitoring wells, the same thing. So you don't, that's not a typical scenario that you'd find somebody trying to make happen.
Yeah, I just thought it was a unique.
It's unique.
It's not. I mean, you're not always running your roads through a spray field.
You're not, but I would not necessarily tell you that it's in our best interest to mix those two. There would be
I was
some.
just curious because I don't know what it matters to. I mean, at the end of the day, the taxpayer just wants the most effective and efficient.
There's a
an
completely,
absorption.
stormwater and wastewater are completely two different permitting animals, just like getting solid waste involved. You keep the solid waste landfill, you keep those DRAs separated from your road water DRAs. You really do encounter some oddities that it would be out of our normal realm to deal with them.
I know it wouldn't be how we always do it.
I know,
gotcha.
I know. But I don't know that it's worth this project.
No, that's fine. That's why I wanted to ask the question. Yeah, I was just curious.
Thank you, sorry, thank you.
I'm sure Mr. Dinkins already considered that.
Actually, no.
Kim told you no, right?
Hadn't considered combining them just because you have different ownership as well, but thank you for the question. So the underpass, so this is just an illustration of, both a concrete and again, this will be done in the future. So what are some of the things we look at when recommending a final alignment? This is just a few. There's a lot of them. We're going to obviously look at the costs of the alignments, and we're trying to find the optimal alignment for the best value. We're going to look at what kind of utility impacts we're going to have, what the mitigation of those impacts are going to be, and again, what that's going to cost and how that's going to affect the utility providers. We're going to look again at environmental stuff, and you'll see this little matrix here where some is more and some is less are noted. There's some geometric advantages to some alignments over others. That'll be part of the consideration. And again, what I would like to note on this is right here on this, it talks about a documented agreement. What we meant to say there is that there was considerable meetings and considerable communications involved trying to build consensus in these alignments. There's no written agreement. I should have worded that differently, so I don't want to mislead you there. But we have worked considerably with both utility providers and feel that some of the alignments, either alignment, there is a preferred alignment for each. So what I've included next is a few excerpts on what the intersection configurations would look like, regardless of the final alignment, because these were recommended as part of the traffic study. So at the intersection of the proposed extension and the Bellevue bypass, which is 92nd Loop, we're anticipating that will be a signalized intersection. So you'll have a right and left turn lane heading out, and right and left turn lanes will be added to 92nd Loop. Moving on to the intersection of existing Emerald Road extension and the reconfiguration of the existing Emerald Road where it would connect. Well, as we look at this slide, I think it's important to note that extending the alignment of Emerald Road to provide the planned corridor, okay, will have some unavoidable residential property impacts. Presently, with either alignment, we're looking at roughly 14 different residential impacts. Three of those have residential structures on them. Staff is going to be attempting to make contact with those three properties, in addition to the mailers that have already been sent, prior to our upcoming public meeting, to fill them in and let them know about the project and encourage them to come to the meeting as well. And again, this may change as a final design moves forward, but to create the type of collector corridor that you have programmed here, impact to some residential property is just going to be unavoidable. Moving on to the northern property, northern intersection. This is an existing Emerald Road and Mary Camp. This is signalized now, will remain signalized later. The one interesting idea or interesting improvement here that you'll note is that there is a southbound left turn lane in this location that services this Spring Drive place. Because of the proximity to the signalized intersection and the increased traffic, it's recommended to remove that left turn into that Spring Place. There is that traffic that would normally make that movement has two other options readily available. They could continue south about 1,000 feet and make a left into the same development homes, or they could. There's actually a road down here, which I'll show you later on 464, that they could make a left in before they get to the signal. So there's two alternate entrances as well. Excuse me, I forgot to mention one thing, and I'll show you on a slide later. Between this intersection, which is on the northern end, and to the point where we cross the CSX Railroad, other than this intersection improvement, the other intersections that are there now and existing are not currently proposed to have any significant modification. They're still going to function as they function now.
Commissioner Gold. Mr. Dinkins, do we know how many people currently utilize that road that you're proposing that we close, that Spring Drive place?
Well, not closure, just left in, right?
Well,
Yeah, I can go. I'm going to
You
go all
still
the
have
way.
right out, right?
I'm going to go all the way to the end slide so you can see this. And I'll go back. It's these houses right here.
yeah, okay,
I'm sorry.
it's okay.
It's these houses right here. This is the intersection where the left is being proposed to be removed. This would be the intersection they would come into and go that way. Or, like I mentioned before, they could turn left in here sooner before they reach the light and access it that way. So the noticing packages went out, and I believe after meeting with Ms. Straub, there's going to be some additional noticing that's done in that area so they can be aware as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to go back. You got to see all my slides. So, public involvement. This is, again, as I've mentioned, we've had multiple meetings with the Office of County Engineer, Marion County Utilities, City of Ocala. Those have happened between March and October of this year, and that was an attempt to build a consensus and some acceptable alignments. We've met with Duke Energy. Again, Duke Energy has not only this transmission line that I spoke of, there's also a distribution line that will be installed on the north side of 92nd Loop, so it's important that we coordinate with them so that they can install their distribution line in a manner that doesn't conflict with the future signalization poles that we have. So that's been ongoing as well. We're here today to present this with y'all and answer any questions or comments. And then again, the public information meeting that's scheduled for December 18th. That's already been noticed in the paper. The direct mails have been sent out, and public comment will be encouraged at that meeting by way of comment card there. If they prefer to take the comment card home and mail it to us, or mail it to the county, or email it, those are going to be available as well. And after a couple of weeks of being open for comment, we'll certainly compile, review, and provide that as part of a documentation in the final PER as well. That'll go into the final alignment consideration. These public meetings, they're a vital part of the PER. A lot of work has been done, but until we have these meetings to complete this process, we can't complete the PER. That's why, you'll see those comments yourself when you get the draft PER. They'll be included as an appendix. Ultimately, we'll come back to present the draft to you again for a second workshop, and then eventually, subsequent to that second workshop, will be presented for consideration. So the schedule, we're scheduled, if all goes well, to complete the PER in its entirety by the first quarter next year. Roadway design would then proceed directly after that. Right-of-way acquisition at a point in roadway design that it was able to move forward. And then construction will be scheduled for 2021, and opening year was planned for 2022. We have here Holland's contact information. He's been our primary contact with the county, and my contact information, if anyone has any questions for me that you don't think of today, certainly feel free to reach out to me. And then I just would like to open it for questions and answers. I have both our traffic consultant and our utility expert here, so hopefully we can answer any of those questions you might have. And I've got a couple of slides that are actually included. They weren't included in the original because we didn't have them done, but they're the papers that are in front of you. It better shows you the alternate alignments at a kind of a more comprehensive scale, and you can see that both alignments being considered essentially are the same from the north end until the point where they cross into the utility ownership, and at that point they diverge. And that's that's the buffer we were speaking of. This is the county's wastewater treatment facility. Their planned expansion is to the south this way. These little purple areas, those are areas that have been identified as potential pond sightings based on our pond sighting report. And then that's the south end of the connection of 92nd Loop. This is the distribution line, the transmission line that runs north-south through the spray fields, and this is the distribution line will be on the north side of this. So as you can see, we need to coordinate so it doesn't conflict.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Yes.
What exactly is the criteria by Duke in order to run the road?
They have
Or what are
the
the,
criteria in maximum elevation change, and they have criteria in how sharply you can cross. You have to cross on a tangent, and you can't cross. It has to be as close to 90 degrees as possible, and they give you maximum angles that you're allowed to cross at, so that they minimize the opportunity for conflict in their easement. I mean, these transmission lines they're the big ones. They carry with them a lot of consequence.
how far do you have to be? You have to try to intersect in the middle of a gap?
There are setbacks. That's not in the middle. There are setbacks from towers. But in this case, we are far enough away. I don't know exactly how far away from the tower, but the cross section, where we were crossing was more of a function of the proposed alignments than it was a function of where the towers were. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Towers just happened to fall in the right spot.
Right.
We were lucky.
You got lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Board, any further questions? Mr. Minner?
So Davis says you're getting into the segment between the railroad and Maricamp. Just looking at those residential parcels in there. It looks like is that all within existing right-of-way, or are you taking all those people's driveways, or what's the extent of your acquisitions going to be along there?
Along this portion here between the right-of-way?
And can they go back to that map? There you go.
Yeah, yeah, right in that section.
Yeah, I'm not watching it there. Along this portion, we're working within the constraints of the existing right-of-way
Okay,
with some shoulder work, some repaving, overlay, shoulder widening, and there'll be some driveway work as well, but no right-of-way acquisitions along here at this point. Right-of-way acquisitions begin south of the railroad track
Right,
and continue on to
okay.
the southern terminus. This is the predominant area of impact that I think you're speaking of.
So,
And as you can see, the extension, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
yeah.
I was just gonna say, earlier you said there are 14, is it 14 lots and 3 with houses on it? Did I under?
14 different identified parcels. I think one of them is a double lot that they had combined. And 3 of them have residential structures right now. Yes, ma'am, it's right in this area.
Okay. The rest are just open lots at this time?
There's a house here, but these aren't being impacted. There's a house here, which again, I think is also going to be preserved. This one right here. This one is not. This one's vacant. The house is there. It's hard to see. They're right in here. There's 2 here and 1 here,
Okay. Thank you.
or vice versa.
Any further questions from the board?
So the driveway work that's proposed, is that just elevation change or, but no, I mean, it won't change any of their property lines, right?
No, sir. Any of the work would be ideally at the property line. If something was needed for elevation change, and a temporary construction easement was needed, obviously that would be
Okay.
attempted, But at this point, the
The idea is not to.
idea is not to do that.
Okay.
Any further? All right, thank you, Mr. Dinkins. Tracy?
Thank you.
Commissioners, thank you for letting us share this information with you today. If you do have anything that you want to have us look at further, please go ahead and share that with us. In the meantime, like we said, we have not engaged with the individual residential property owners, and now we start that process. So that will begin with that public meeting. And as Davis indicated, those 3 homeowners, we're going to reach out to them separately and make sure we start to have conversations with them prior to that public meeting as well. And then from there, we hear their feedback. We take all the feedback that we've learned, and then we bring it back to you with a recommendation as the preliminary engineering report. A lot of this work has to be done because of the land acquisitions. We do a lot of that groundwork ahead of time to make sure that we're making the best decisions on behalf of all the community. So Attorney Mentor provides us some very good guidance following strict legal requirements for us to go through those property acquisitions. And that's where we're at in this stage of this process. Okay?
Any other questions, comments from the board?
Unless Mr. Mentor has anything to.
All right, with that, the workshop will be adjourned, and we will be starting back with our next workshop at 3 o'clock.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we want to.
Hold on, let me go.
Need the gavel?
Welcome, everybody, to the workshop to discuss the 1 cent infrastructure surtax priority project. Today is Tuesday, December 3rd. It's 3 p.m. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Chairman Bryant, Vice Chairman Gold,
Here.
Commissioner Moore.
Here.
Commissioner Zalek. Commissioner Stone.
Here.
And before,
Chairman Gold, I did receive a call from Chairman Bryant. She apologized. She's not going to be able to come back due to a family emergency, and I believe she is on her way down to Orlando.
okay.
She hope everything will be okay, but she wants me to make sure you all know that.
All right, and before we start the meeting, I just want to recognize some of our elected officials who are out in the audience and some of our administrators. We have Mayor Gwynn, Mayor Dabowski from the city of Bellevue, Mayor Burns, is he here? Didn't see him yet. And from the town of McIntosh, we have Mayor Hamilton, Beth Nelson, town manager, Scott Milliken, I'm sorry, Scott, I almost did it. You're the president of the council, Frank Crotty, and a few others there, so thank you very much. And then from the town of Reddick, we also have Steve Rogers that's here. So welcome, everybody. If I missed a few of you, I apologize. And we're glad that everybody's here today, and also see Mr. Zobler out there, and Mr. Kaufman, and several other officials, and also the Chief Deputy from the Sheriff's Department, Robert Douglas, standing in for the Sheriff Billy Woods. So we'll start our meeting off with a presentation by the County Administrator, Mr. Bionis.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to have this meeting and to discuss the proposed futures of our sales tax. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, and this agenda was published for the public to review and to see if they are interested in any of those items. On page 1 of the package you have, we have a projected revenues for the next 4 calendar years, what the revenues would be from the renewal of the sales tax. A total of $236,634,000, and that will be also shared with the municipalities. The county share of that amount will be $195,857,000. Keeping and going with the direction that we have used for the previous sales tax that is still in effect today, the distribution would be 60% transportation, 40% public safety. You also have received in the past a recommendations from the CEP. They put together a committee like they did when we first initiated the sales tax, and they reviewed all the needs in the communities, and they were in full support of this renewal. And they also, we received a letter yesterday from the CEP emphasizing the formula going forward with the sales tax to continue using the money for the same type of projects that we have done in previous years. And that would be to use the money for the transportation infrastructure and capital needs for public safety. With that said, and what was discussed with the board before, the 40-60 split for the county share of the money, if you go to page 2, I have a list from all the public safety agencies in the county, which include all the sheriff's departments, fire services, EMS, public safety communication, and we added a projects for animal services, which falls under the public safety type umbrella. All those projects are listed in here. Also in the appendix, you have a lot of details about each project, what the cost would be for each project, and the type of each project. The total 40% of the projected revenues would be about $78,342,000. The proposed projects add up to be $93,504,000. So that's a $15 million deficit. So we are presenting all the information that we received. I am expecting from this workshop, you're gonna give me direction to go back and prioritize in each area so we can bring you a final list that would be within the projected revenues. On page 3, I have all the transportation projects listed for the county. The 60% share is $117 million. The projects that have been identified as needed projects so far, $210 million, so that's a deficit of about $92 million. Again, the same thing. We will go back and we prioritize to stay within the projected revenues. Also on page 4 and 5, you have detailed quantities for each item, what it will be. If you have any questions on those projects, I would be more than happy to answer them. Other than that, we will move next to Mr. Minter, and we will go over the draft ordinance, and I think that's where we need to have the discussion on the ballot language and what do you want to be on the ballot.
Mr. Minter?
So the draft ordinance that we prepared is basically, in its current form, just modeled after the existing sales tax ordinance. And so that's why we need your input today to tell us if the board, after hearing input, is going to make any changes to the uses for which the tax can be made so that we can develop the ballot language appropriately.
Now, on the, that also includes the adding of animal control in there, or animal services?
Yeah, that would be something new that we would,
Under public safety, if you look at the parentheses, we say law enforcement, fire, and EMS. I think we need to clarify further and add PSC and animal control.
Okay. We had PSC in there last time.
It was covered under fire, but we did not specifically by name mention PSC. I think it would be wise to do that.
All right. Do we need board discussion on this?
I said go for
I think at the end, after you hear from all the other entities
Okay.
too, then you guys can have a final discussion and give directions.
All right. At this point, I'm going to open up to any of the local municipalities or to any that want to come up here and speak. If you want to come up and say anything with this. We'll start off with Mayor Gwynn from the city of Ocala, and next would be Mayor Dobowski after that.
Thank you for letting me be here today. First of all, I want to thank y'all for supporting the 1 cent sales tax. First of all, wanted to let you know what we did with the sales tax that we had. We built 2 fire stations, one on 31st Street and 8th Avenue. We built a police station on 8th Avenue. In the process of building a 3rd fire station and 2 police substations on MLK. We resurfaced 80 lane miles of roads. The microsurfaced and reclaimed and overlaid and milled, overlaid. Purchased 33 police vehicles. And I want to acknowledge also the letter that Chairman Stone, sent us, that I responded back, with that. And we're going to stay with the same things that we did last year, which was, public safety and roads. And there's 4 areas that we want to deal with. There's safety, public safety, roads, citywide capital projects, and fiber infrastructure. And we want to allocate 25% of the total sales tax collected to each one of those priorities. Here's why. We've got a need for additional parking downtown. Obviously, if you go downtown, we need more
parking. Could you repeat those? Which ones, Commissioner Stone?
Could you just repeat those priorities?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Could you just repeat those priorities?
Yes, yes.
Your 4 items that you,
Yeah, public safety, roads, citywide capital projects, and fiber infrastructure. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. I probably didn't make that clear. So the citywide projects, we need additional parking for downtown. We need citywide infrastructure and the need for community improvements. So let me talk about the infrastructure on the fiber. So as an economic hub for the county, the fiber gives us competitive advantage for employment growth. And much like the business part that we did, everyone did, the 49, we had to build it first for the businesses to come. Same with the fiber, and it'll strategically give Ocala an advantage with 5G and the Internet things coming soon. And a master plan approach is better than cherry picking different places to do it with the private sector. And the infrastructure affects all of the following in our community: economic development, livability, public safety, education, healthcare, emergency communications, smart grid, efficient government services, environmental stewardship, and smart city applications. They can also be a public-private partnership and internet service providers, promotes competition. Some areas only have one choice, which allows a provider to charge non-competitive rates, and the city could provide rural connectivity at the same speeds as city residents. And I have with me today, obviously, John Zobler out there, our city manager, Bill Coffin, our assistant city manager, and Mel Poole that oversees our fiber optics. So if y'all have any questions for me or them, I'm sure they're ready to answer those questions.
Commissioner Stone?
Well, I would just ask Mayor Gwynn, concerning the infrastructure for the fiber optics.
Right.
You charge the user for that service,
We charge who?
the user of the
Correct.
fiber optics.
Correct.
I'm not sure where I stand on that, and I don't know if I need to weigh in as I approve of that or not, but I just would think that using the sales tax dollars would be better spent by doing something that everybody benefits from, and users would pay for the service and the lines that they get that service from, would be my.
Well, I mean, we've obviously got to build the infrastructure to do it, and then we, sell the actual service. I mean, a couple of points I would make on that, and I'm not being argumentative, but, that's our money to do with, as we see fit, number one. Number two, you guys are in the water and sewer business, correct?
We do
Yeah, and you
provide
probably
that
don't.
service.
Yeah, and you probably don't charge the end user for all the infrastructure. That's
Well, that's not accurate.
yeah. I mean, you have the developer, buy that and then get credits back towards that. So
So that does bring me to a question. Do we,
just as a comparison.
as a ordinance, the ordinance has to be written to allow for whatever it's going to be used for?
I believe so.
Is that the
In
legalities?
general terms, I mean, it doesn't become microscopic, but in general terms, yeah.
I think to Commissioner Stone's point, though, can the city spend it on whenever they want to, or does it have to be focused on, I mean, any municipality, can it spend the dollars on whatever it wants to, or does it have to stick to specifically infrastructure or public safety if that's what the ordinance says, or you mentioned citywide projects, I don't know what those are,
Well,
how robust can it be?
the statute provides for the local government infrastructure surtax, but then there's some pretty broad categories of what can be done within that umbrella term of infrastructure. So I would think they've got a pretty good leeway to decide what they want to spend that on.
So it wouldn't necessarily have to be in the ordinance, because it would be up to them to choose how they choose to spend it. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, these areas that we talked about, public safety, roads, capital-wide projects, and fiber infrastructure, I mean, that's pretty, like, you were saying, pretty broad, but, I don't know how specific you need to get, in the ordinance.
I think some of this
On the
goes
ballot.
into your, if I can use the term marketing to the voters who are going to be called upon to approve this tax. And so generally speaking, the various governmental entities publish what their intended uses are so that the public can see if they're happy with that or not before they vote on it.
So in that publishing, and I'm new to this, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to educate me. Would the city then, they will market their projects, the county will market will make public and transparent what the ordinance is and what our intent to use the funds are?
Yeah, there are certain statutory notice requirements for the election and so forth, but my recollection is that last time we did this, I think all the major users at some point published what their intended plans were for the anticipated revenues.
Right.
That's correct.
Do you all keep on any sort of website, the projects that you've already completed with the funds?
Yes.
Okay, just
Yes.
as we do,
Yeah, I mean, we put, signs on roads, say this is your
I've
sales
seen
tax,
yours.
spend. I think we even put it on our police cars and, a variety of different things to let people know that, this is what we're spending them on, these are your dollars, and they're going back into these projects. I mean, and I've always bragged on you guys, when you've done this in the past, like when you built the judicial center, it was on time, under budget, and I mean, your thing is, we do with the money what we say we're going to do with it, and you have a great track record, of doing it. We all do, and I think obviously, citizens should support it and vote for it, just like you're proposing. But I mean, we've got the money and we've got, certain things that we need to do with it. So, once we get it, we'll allocate and council will decide, where those priorities are. And, like I said, the ones that I highlighted here are the ones that, council's directed. And so we'll, spend the money,
well, and Mayor, I certainly am not trying to nitpick you.
Oh,
but
no, I
wanna
understand.
Make sure that what we are putting in the ordinance at the end, that
Right.
is something we've all stacked hands on and we can support.
Absolutely. We want it to pass. Yeah,
Exactly.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
your understanding.
Commissioner
right.
Moore has a question.
And my question's sort of on that line, but, because like inside the city, the utility provider, of course, City of Ocala, but for high-speed internet, if we were to do anything outside, how would we determine whether Cox got it, Bright House, whoever? Because, that's basically what it is, it's a business. And we went, what I'm trying to wrap my mind around is using sales tax to fund the business. Because I don't know, maybe, Mr. Mentor, are we allowed to use sales tax to fund a business, or am I looking at this?
To fund a business?
It's not-
Because, well, it's a enterprise fund within, because like our enterprise fund, say it's our landfill, it pays for itself. That's where I'm just trying to wrap my mind around using a sales tax dollar for whatever, know what I mean? Because like if it was in the county, who would get the thing and how would we pay for, high speed if it was in the county? So I'm just trying to wrap my mind and understand. Maybe you can help me understand it. Because I'm just not understanding using sales tax dollars for private business. Or it's not private business,
Not a private
enterprise.
business.
It's enterprise fund, but same thing.
It
And
competes with
it competes with private business, but
But it's no,
it's
Commissioner,
an enterprise
no
fund,
different than
yeah.
our-
It's a
any
different
other
thing, but
utility.
I'm just trying to see, is it,
Well,
basically, okay, let me rephrase that. Is this a legal use of the sales tax
Well, it's
fund?
legal, or we would.
Ed,
Yes, okay.
Okay, so,
Our attorney said.
for instance, in one part of the statute, there's reference to, for instance, expenditures incurred for financing the closure of landfills. And then it gets down to the definition of infrastructure, and that means any fixed capital expenditure or fixed capital outlay associated with construction, reconstruction, improvement of public facilities that have a life expectancy of more than 5 years. Any related land acquisition, land improvement, design engineering cost. So it, in the statute itself, it doesn't specify whether the public facility you're talking about is in an enterprise fund or not.
Okay.
So, just looking at it here, I think that would be within the realm of the statute. However, Monier's pointing out to me that in the current draft of the ordinance, the ordinance with the ballot language, it says to fund public safety, law enforcement, fire, and EMS, capital needs, and road projects.
And this would be
So
a
we probably are going to need to tweak that language somewhat, because obviously the fiber infrastructure is outside of that public safety, capital needs, and road projects. So we
And
need to
how-
expand
How
that
would
language.
we make the voters aware that it's only city of Ocala that gets the fiber and not our county residents? How would
That
we?
would be, as Commissioner Stone said, the advertisement of it, because we're
Advertisement,
not
but I
gonna
mean,
put
but
it on
the
the
actual-
ballot.
I don't know about
ballot.
that. See, here's the problem is that our ballot language, similar to what it said last time, was when we all got together and said, hey, these are the categories it's going to be for. It was to fund public safety, i.e. law enforcement, fire, EMS, capital needs. So it's capital needs for those areas and road projects.
That's what it
That's
is
all we
right
had
now.
in here. Then under section 6, as it says in the ordinance today, is that Marion County and the 5 municipalities, it names them all, shall each be required to use their respective share of the process of the surtax if the surtax is approved by the majority of voters in public safety, i.e. law enforcement, fire, EMS, capital equipment needs, and transportation infrastructure.
So that'd have to
Yeah,
change.
so that language that we
If the
currently
city of
have.
Ocala's attorney says fiber is part of their transportation infrastructure need or something, if they make that claim, then that would be on them to
Right.
figure out if we pass this language.
Right.
Otherwise, we'd have to open up this language to be about parking garages and buildings and other infrastructure, correct?
Exactly, Commissioner, and my recommendation would be,
I think we should be really careful about that.
if that
And
is
then you
going to be.
getting in the weeds.
If that is going to be a project to be used to be funded by the sales tax, we need to be very transparent. We need to call it what it is, and we need to show it in the ballot language, so the people, they know what they are voting on. We can't say public infrastructure and then start picking up projects that had nothing to do with roads, or vice versa for public safety.
I don't disagree.
If you all agree that's what needs to be in, that's what the money is gonna be used on, let's put it in the ballot.
So let me recap what I'm saying here. Under the statute, what Kent is saying would fall under the statutory definition of infrastructure. It's just not within the language of the ballot as it stands right now, so that would have to be modified to encompass that type of thing.
Mr. Zogler?
John Zobler, City Manager, City of Ocala. A couple of points. One is that we do believe there's tremendous public benefit to expansion of our fiber optic system. We've gone to great lengths to provide free fiber optic systems from one end of the city to the other, from the farm market all the way down to Tuscaloosa Park, including all of our major parks. Every park that we have, including golf courses, has free Wi-Fi services. As ride sharing and Uber and more things become important in the downtown area, there's going to be increasing public access to want to get on 5G or other services to access those services in our downtown. We do plan to expand into the county beyond the city limits with our infrastructure, and so we're happy to map that out for the county commission.
Thank you, Mr. Zolber.
Any further questions from the board? All right.
And I think if we, with all due respect, if we do have an animal services project, we probably need to spell that out Again, I think part of why we were successful is the track record Mayor Gwynn talked about, but the fact that through this entire process, we were dead set on a mission to solve transportation issues and public safety needs. When we had ambulance issues, we had fire issues, we had capital need issues, and we were successful because of that. I don't disagree that maybe you put in here animal services and maybe a parking garage downtown because community users use that. I just think how we craft that, we're gonna need your help probably because I'm scared every time we add another piece to this. Every piece to me adds voters that won't vote for it. And so I just want to be very careful. I think transportation and roads has been successful. I don't know that I want to go off that path.
Right.
So that's my only concern, Mayor.
And not vote for it.
Right.
Commissioner Stone was saying.
What if the people in the county say, "Oh, listen, I don't care about
I love this one, but
this, that."
I hate that one, so I'm just going to vote against it because I don't like that one out of 32 things you got on there.
All the things.
That's your risk.
And we've got a letter of support from the CEP that says we should stay the course of exclusively modeling this ballot language as we have in 2016.
Right.
For us all to keep in mind.
Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right.
Mayor Dukowski. And up next will be Mayor Burns or a representative from City of Dunellen if somebody's here.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Christine Dubkowski, Mayor of the City of Bellevue. On behalf of our commission, I just came here to just say that we are in full support of your efforts to extend the 1 cent sales tax. With the last disbursement that we received, we used the vast majority of our funds to enlarge and enhance our police department, which was a much needed project for our city. And then we spent basically the rest of the funds on equipment, vehicles, and radios. If the 1 cent sales tax is extended, we will use a small portion of that for additional equipment for the police department, including aero boards and license plate reader systems. And then the majority of our portion of the sales tax we would allocate for road-related construction projects, such as much-needed sidewalks throughout the city for safety and transportation needs, and drainage areas related to road construction. Also road repairs, repaving of roads, and paving of some roads that need to be paved in the city.
And I just want to comment too on that even though it may seem like a small item, the smaller cities that we have here, a $5,000, $10,000 item is a huge amount for you. I've talked to Chief Holland before, and he's helped do some things to train other people, and it's an incredible impact to your city on there. So.
It absolutely was. It was an amazing impact and a project that we could never have done without these funds. And the same would hold true for additional sales tax revenue in the upcoming years to take care of some of the issues that we need to for transportation in the city. So we
Any questions from the board?
encourage you to.
Thank you, Mayor Dukowski.
Mr. Minner?
Just be aware, on that license reader thing or whatever that is, just be aware that all of these items have to have a life expectancy of 5 years. So if
Okay.
it's something that is not expected, it
I'll
doesn't
mention that to
qualify
the
for
chief.
that.
It will. All right. Any other? Thank you,
Thank
Mayor. All right. Is there anybody here from the City of Dunellen? All right. Mayor Hamilton?
Mr. Gold, I'm going to defer to our town manager.
Yes, sir. Thank you. How are you today?
Good afternoon. The town of McIntosh is also
Need your
grateful.
name
for
and address,
Beth
please.
Nelson, town manager for the town of McIntosh. We are grateful to come before you today, and we also support the 1 cent sales tax initiative. We have been very busy repaving roads. We have watershed runoff problems, and we have been working on that. I have been working with some local pavers, and we have looked at a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, and within that, we have about $600,000 worth of road repairs and infrastructure, ditches, culverts that could help with some of the watershed that we experience. So this tax in our town means a whole lot. And so that would be something else. We have also just recently completed a study on 441, which runs through our little town. And through that study, we've identified that we have a problem with speeding and things like that. I've met with the sheriff and identified some equipment that we could purchase that would help with that, with helping to curtail and to give data to the DOT and to the sheriff's office. So that would be another use of the money that would come from this tax. So.
The traffic counters?
Yes, the stealth data collection boxes we did use from the sheriff's office, but those are a limited resource, and that would be something that we could use, and the data that it provides is invaluable. So that was really good. And also, we have a small school that's right on 441, and we do have the speed signs that slow you down, but we don't have the speed radar signs that tell people what speed they are going. And that's something that the sheriff's office and conversations that I've had with DOT that they would think would be appropriate, and we would purchase, with the use of this money. So we're talking about some deadly speeds on that roadway. 20% of the people that travel through that area of 441 are traveling between 60 and 80 miles per hour. So.
With a triple-digit high.
Yes, one of the highs was 125. So.
In the middle of the day.
In the middle of the day, that's right.
Sorry about that.
Board, any further questions? Mr. Minner? You've asked on the others. Yeah? All right. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Rogers.
Refer to the commission.
All right, very good. I am gonna ask Mr. Shealy to come up here. I know this is a little out of order, not on here, but the CEP did do the study and did a lot of our background for this to help us. And I know have just kind of want you to clarify the information that Commissioner Stone mentioned, if you could.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Kevin Shealy, Ocala Marion County Chamber and Economic Partnership. We are so very excited to see the sales tax renewal moving forward. We know the impact it's had on our community over the last 3.5 years and how important it is that it be renewed. As has already been mentioned, we brought together our task force again this year to look at the options. What drove this in the beginning was transportation funding. And that's still key. We know that having worked very closely, in particular, in this case with the county staff and the county engineer and looking at the road demands and needs, is we still have quite a backlog of things we need to get done in building. We're looking at already a $100 million gap in what's available. Good that we should have money to address half of that. But the CEP, through our political committee last time, raised and spent nearly $60,000 to pass the sales tax in support of that. We've already spent around $10,000 preparing for this next time, and anticipate that we're going to have to go raise from the business community and spend probably close to $75,000 to $80,000 to educate and let voters know how important this is. We want to see that this tax renewed because we know the impact it has. That said, and to echo what Commissioner Zalek mentioned a moment ago, we think keeping it simple is really key. Part of what voters understood last time was transportation and public safety. When they understood that those are what these funds are going to be used for, and all the municipalities have done a tremendous job of sharing that information out of how they're spending the money and what it was for. I think there's a tremendous amount of voter confidence. When I'm out speaking to groups, people talk about the sales tax in a positive way. I don't know about you, I generally don't hear people talking about taxes in a positive way. So I think it's really key that we keep this. And in particular, since we know that at least almost a third of the revenue comes from people who don't live in our community, it's easy to draw the line that they're using our roads, they're depending on our public safety, therefore they should be helping to pay for them. And they're able to do that through the sales tax. So we would encourage you to keep the language, as our executive committee voted unanimously, to keep the language as is as we move forward. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Oh, okay. Any questions from the board for Mr. Shealy? All right, and I appreciate it, and thank you for all that you and your staff have done on this.
Of course.
Thank you, Kevin.
And Mayor Burns just walked in. Didn't mean to call you out there, sir, but would you like to come up and talk about the sales tax, or were you prepared for that, sir? All right. Sorry about that.
Apologize.
No, and I've learned myself that I never.
You had to come in all the way from Denellen.
Yeah, I never.
Understand.
I never
Wasn't
critique
quite
people.
used to the winter traffic yet.
Yeah. Yeah, we never critique people because we don't know what you might be going through at the time to get you here a little later.
In 1 second, let me pull this up.
Plus, we know that we have
I
some traffic
appreciate your
issues.
patience.
So.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Madam Chair isn't here, but good
She had a
afternoon.
family emergency, so.
I understand that one. Basically, what we want to say from our part of the world is let us keep our focus on using this local tax on serving the public. It's been such a success over in Denellen with our need for upgrading our fire department, well, now it's Marion counties, but upgrading our police, our cars, and again, we service not just the local area, but we have tourism that comes in, and folks should help pay that burden. I am extremely conservative. I'm a former businessman, but this is a tax that I feel like is a very positive tax for all our neighbors here in Marion County. So we're here, I'm here, just to put a voice to the southwestern corner of Marion County to let you know that we are in full support of what you've already done, but we'd like to keep it focused just on the emergency services like you have before. So with that said,
Roads.
thank you.
Any questions from the board for the mayor?
You're good with roads and public safety?
Yes, we are very positive with that. Thank you.
And then also, before you came in, I talked, when the mayor of Bellevue got up to, just wanted to mention how important this is, those small amounts that you may get, small or large, what an impact that has on you, mostly with your police department, because we spoke to Chief McQuaig, and he does a tremendous job of trying to balance those small amounts of money, and we know that this has helped.
It's been a huge help, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Wish I'd got here a little earlier. I'd be a little more
All's
prepared.
good. Next, I'm going to ask Chief Douglas, do you want to come up or have one of your representatives come up? It's completely up to you. Okay. All right. Before we bring this back for discussion from the board, I just want to say that I've looked over the public safety needs in depth, and I see that they are needed. They're well needed by both sides on there, and I don't see where there's any waste. And some of the needs that are on there that look like some big ticket items are things that are very crucial needs that have gone for a long time, and that just kind of consider that. And I just ask the board, if you do have any questions on those, please bring them up now, and we'll ask the agencies that are here. But with that,
Point out, one of them's been my entire time on the commission, what was it, Sheriff Blair brought up, and then Emery Gainey brought up, now Sheriff Woods is asking for the same thing, so you mentioned that, yet some of these have been long time, requests, so we do need to you know.
So we're at the point now, what we need to do is decide the language, and also if we can add the animal services into this.
It is on your project list.
Mhm.
What I need from you, clear directions today, that you want to continue with the 40-60 split, then I will ask each office to go back and live within their allocated amount.
Right.
I mean, all good projects, but we need to live within the projected revenues. On top of this, I think we all need to be careful. We need to make sure every item we put on the list to be purchased, that it does qualify to be a capital item. We need to be very careful with this. And we, to make sure it meets the statute criteria explanation that it is a capital item, from cost and from the life of the item.
Commissioner Zalik?
So I would also add that we actually, I guess once we get approval today, that Monier would also, we could give instruction to form and create the next website about the preliminary discussions that have happened here today, about what that would look like, about preliminary projects once we get everything back from all the agencies. And we form that website again, because that website, people should be able to look at, here's what the commission did and the projects we're still working on and how that's formed, and they should be able to click another button and be able to go to, okay, this is why they're asking, our community, does our community want to go to this next level, from a funding and public safety standpoint. My suggestion in the language would be to, where it says in the third line or so, to fund public safety, under the quotations for law enforcement, fire, EMS, communications, and animal control. I think that'll solve our issue. Would be my recommendation, Mr. Chair.
And that's, animal services covers the entire county. So we
Yep.
see that and public safety communications.
That's correct.
So those should be added to the parentheses there, as well as in section 6, but I'm sure Mr. Mentor will go through and make sure that they match up.
Just a question.
Yes,
But under public safety, animal services already is there, correct, or no?
Well, so is communications, sir, but we're just bringing them out.
Making it very
Oh,
clear.
making more transparent.
Transparent, that's
Gotcha.
all.
Okay.
Because technically, communications was in under fire and EMS last time, but it wasn't pulled out, so this
Gotcha.
time, because we're gonna
Okay.
spend
I get where you're going
some,
on it.
I think it's proposed to spend more money on communications in the future, that we have that as a pulled out item.
I mean, the
Make it
first
more-
big project we did from the
Right.
sales, the existing sales
Was all the
tax,
radios,
it was all the radios and the phone
millions of
system for the
dollars,
sheriff.
so.
Right. Okay.
So for clarity's sake again, to fund public safety, parentheses, to include law enforcement, fire, EMS, communications, and animal control.
That's correct.
Close parentheses.
That's right.
Capital needs, and then road projects.
Yep.
And you need a consensus from us
Yep.
for that?
Consensus
Well, it's
and
314 from Highway 40 to Salt Springs. Needs to be looked at and reevaluated.
Looked at?
we will
Okay.
review, and
Well, it needs to be reviewed and reevaluated, because it's a terrible road, and it's the only way my constituents get from Salt Springs back to town, so, I'm sure that there's lots of other projects competing there, so commissioners, I'm sure you
Well,
can get with
you're just
Monier.
saying that because
Bring back
Jack
the
is in
And
the
we can-
audience.
We can bring all these up at
we
a
will
later
refine the
back the
list
time.
and bring it
priority.
back.
Just refine the list with
And-
additional options.
And I need consensus from you with the split 40-60 law enforcement roads.
Yes.
We are still on that.
Same
Yes.
split.
Okay,
Yep, I think we have direction, then,
that's all what I need from you, Commissioner.
all right. Everything good?
So I would just say, in the education process, we do need to educate the public that the current 1 cent sales tax expires. And so we're not going from 7% to 8%, we're going to stay at 7%.
It's important.
That's very important in the education process for this. So.
All right. Anything else?
That's all what I have.
All right. This workshop will be adjourned. Thank you.